So the communists ran an op against deportations in Minnesota. They deployed so many street animals, they got so rabid that 2 of their street animals died. Then something happened. And here's what happened. The media started to run story after story after story about these dead communists. They would use the best possible picture of these people. You know how they do it. They use the most flowery language humanly possible to describe communist street animals. Dead, murdered. Every late night show, murdered by ICE thugs. And then somebody, who knows who, got in Donald Trump's ear and said, hey, this looks bad. Hey, man, this isn't good. This is bad press. We should back off. Donald Trump made the decision. Kristi Noem, get out of Minnesota. Greg Bovino, he was the Border Patrol guy keeping the crowds back. Greg Bovino, get out of Arizona or get out of Minnesota. Tom Homan's going to get sent in. We're going to work with the Minnesota politicians. What deal did they strike? Well, it seems obvious what deal they struck now. Minnesota politicians would start handing over the violent criminals they arrested to ICE, but they got something back too. In turn, we decided we weren't going to deport as many people. We weren't going to arrest and deport as many people, and now we have confirmation of this. As I mentioned the other night, deportations were down 12%. 12%. Down, not up. Remember, we were building the deportation machine? Why would deportations be down? They were down because the Trump administration struck a deal with Minnesota that we wouldn't deport as many people. Now, love or hate any of that, that's what happened. My question to you is this. If you are a communist, what lesson did you learn? What lesson did you learn? If we're in the grocery store and my son asks to buy a box of double stuffed Oreos, and I say, no, you can't have double stuffed Oreos, and my son throws himself on the ground and starts screaming and yelling, I want the double stuffed Oreos. And I eventually turn to him and say, all right, I'll get you a little box of double stuffed Oreos. What lesson did my son learn? I'm going to play you our new DHS Secretary Mullin. You know, I already played the audio from earlier. This is different audio. I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed. Listen to this.
We do have a different leadership style. We're still enforcing immigration laws. We're still deporting illegals that shouldn't be here. We're still going after the worst of the worst. But we're doing it in a more quiet way because my goal in 6 months is to not have DHS on the lead story every day. We want.
Your goal is what? Hold on. You're the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, charged with border security and the deportation of foreigners. We have 50 million of them that have to go. That's probably a low number. 50 million have to be located, arrested, and sent out of my country. What's your goal?
We do have a different leadership style. We're still enforcing immigration laws. We're still deporting illegals that shouldn't be here. We're still going after the worst of the worst. But we're doing it in a more quiet way because my goal in 6 months is to not have DHS on the lead story every day. We want.
Your goal is no more bad press? You ask why communists spend the money and take the time to carry out these communist ops. Why do it? People get arrested. People get killed. Think about the just time and effort it takes to set up all these groups. Why do you do this? Why do you people run out there and The street animals themselves. Why do you run out into the streets? Aren't you hot? Aren't you bored? You sing all your stupid freaking songs. Why do you do it? Aren't you embarrassed? By the way, if you take it too far, you might get shot. Pepper sprayed. They're always getting pepper sprayed. Why do you communist street animals do these ops? Why did they do it in the Soviet Union? Why did they do it in East Germany? Why did they do it in every single communist country that's ever existed? Why do they do these tactics? Because of this.
We do have a different leadership style. We're still enforcing immigration laws. We're still deporting illegals that shouldn't be here. We're still going after the worst of the worst. But we're doing it in a more quiet way because my goal in 6 months is to not have DHS on the lead story every day.
Because it works. Let's be honest. The George Floyd protests were insanely successful. You can say, well, Black Lives Matter. They're on the outs now. They're all getting arrested. No one cares about that anymore. All that stuff's true. Yeah, how are the laws in big cities now after those protests? What do the police departments look like in big cities after those protests? How many Soros DAs got elected to open up the jails after those protests? Soros DAs who are still elected today. The communists called on the shock troops to raise a stink after some scumbag died of a drug overdose, and it was one of the most insanely successful communist ops in the history of the United States of America. After that op was done, the communists met in a room. They probably didn't have a meeting, but they met in a room and looked at each other and said, oh my gosh, did that work? Let's do it again. Next time something really threatens the communist revolution, let's do it again. It worked again. That's the goal of a new DHS secretary. No bad press. If that's the goal, whew, in trouble.